This is the OMFL.
You can't touch this.
And you're in the mix with Kinda Real Name. Here's another OMFL production.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Press Pass Live, your weekly OMFL podcast show. I'm sorry, I was pressing a whole lot of buttons trying to make sure we were good to go, and it's hard. I can't do two things at once, okay? So for me to press multiple buttons and make sure we go, it can be a little bit confusing. I'm glad that you're here with us. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to dive into the OMFL champion, Dallas Cowboys. That's right, Dwayne back at the very tippy top of the OMFL. So we're going to talk about that championship game against the Tennessee Titans. We're going to talk about a new board member and some things that we're doing here as we move into Madden 22. And then we're going to dig into scouting. I got my boy Win here with me. Bloop is going to be joining us here any minute. And we're going to dive deep into NHL, the scouting opportunities that game presents itself, and what we would like to see, maybe pretty pleased with a cherry on top in Madden 22. So let's just jump right into it. Win, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing well. Second week in a row, so I made it back.
That's right. Sorry. You caught me mid-drink, but yes, Win is back for the second week in a row. I'm so glad that Win's here. Win is another content creator. His microphone is a little staticky, but hang in there with us, okay? I promise it's going to be okay. Maybe it'll clean itself up, but either way, let's dive into what we just came out of, the OMFL championship for season number 96. Let me see if it's still going to be here. It is not, but it should be under history, which I got to figure out where they hid that. Where is going to be stats?
League history.
I see player legacy NFL records. He's
back out.
No, okay. League history right there. There you go, Nate. That's what happens when you read. The OMFL crowns a season 96 champion with Mr. Dakota Scott, Dwayne, as we know him here, winning 27-12. Now, Win, I know you were kind of in and out on this one. How much of this one did you get to watch?
I caught a bit of the first half and most of the second half. I came in when it was, I believe, 14-6 Cowboys, or 14-6 Cowboys, and then Dwayne put a field goal up to make it 17-6, and the Titans just kept driving. You'd see them, drive down the field and make some progress, but then just really, really critical errors, interceptions, fumbles, missed field goal at one point, I believe in the fourth quarter, really kind of turned the tide, but just Dwayne just making his opponent make a lot of mistakes, more than they probably would like to, and when you bend but don't break, that's what happens.
No, that's exactly what happened. Look, Tennessee Titans had a 3rd and 27 after a big penalty on second down. Tries to throw it, gets picked off by Chody. How do you say this? Chidobe? Oh, I don't know. What am I even doing over here?
Awuzie.
That guy. He picks it off for his first of 3 on the day, sets Dallas up for a pretty easy touchdown by Ezekiel Elliott. They try to make another drive, end up in a punt. Dallas goes up 14. and then it's just kind of snowballs after that. Tennessee had a couple of chances there late, but really it was Dallas's ability to pass the ball, which is not something that Dwayne is known for, especially with this quarterback. I mean, we got to understand this guy was like a 67 overall quarterback when he drafted him 2 seasons ago. Had a rough season with him, but then bounced back right after that. I mean, he was throwing it all over the field. There was one play in particular. Dallas holds Tennessee, I think, on a 4th down turnover late in that game. Comes back with the very next play, 45 yards over the top to Cooper, sets him up for a touchdown, and I think put him ahead for good. Tennessee trailed this entire game. He made it tight. I think he got it within 10 there for a little bit, but just never was able to make enough plays to pull it away. They had a really good running game going, but his quarterback, really, really struggled in this game, and it showed in really key moments. His defense did a good job. I mean, you hold Dallas to 27 points even after 3 turnovers, but the Dallas defense was swarming. He got a lot of pressure on I'm trying to think, Hendricks. They got a lot of pressure on Hendricks, and on the other side, Tennessee got almost no pressure on the Dallas quarterback offense or the Dallas offense. Their quarterback had all the time in the world. He was able to roll left, roll right. He was able to throw it away when there was nothing open, and Dallas just does what Dallas does. When you play the guys like Penguins, Dallas, D-Money, Mo, these like top guys here, it's like they play a perfect game every single time. It's like they call the perfect plays, and they play a perfect game every time, and you almost have to play just as perfect just to have an opportunity to really hang in there. So Dallas Cowboys come away with a really great victory here, and cements himself in OMFL lure as one of the top guys here in the OMFL, and a guy that's going to be in the record books. I think this was his 4th championship in 4 human years, I think 3 human years, something like that. He's been here, and so congrats to the Dallas Cowboys and champions for season number 96. I know you weren't here for this season, but you got to watch a couple playoff games, especially OMFL Bowl. Any kind of outsider's perspective on what it was like to watch this one?
On the Titans Cowboys front, it was an interesting game. The Titans, you could tell, were pressing a little bit. They knew what they were up against in the Cowboys. I think that's why you saw a couple of decisions that were less than stellar, especially over the middle there in the Dallas defense, into the teeth of that Dallas defense. Tennessee, don't take anything away from Tennessee. I mean, it takes a lot to make it to the Super Bowl, to the OMFL Bowl. So he had to go through a gauntlet as well, including, I believe, he had to beat, was it Pittsburgh in the championship game, I believe. And so you look at it takes a lot to even get to the point where you can say you're OMFL Bowl 2nd place. So just a great season for the Titans. You hate to kind of dog the decisions that were made there in that game. It's just the worst time to have those decisions come back to bite you. But, Dwayne, the little bit I've watched of his Cowboys, I believe he played you once this season I watched, and that, I believe, was one of your miserable games.
Yeah.
I don't remember 100%, but I think that's one. Yeah, he is really, at least from what I can tell, he definitely is one of those guys that frustrates you because he always seems to play perfect, and you have to pretty much meet him to even have a chance against him. And I can understand that being really frustrating.
No, he just seems to call, again, that perfect game. It feels like every play call, everything he does, is just, you got to play perfect. And look, on your first drive, first 3rd down, you throw a pick to set him up in a short field. Man, it's a tough road ahead. Now, to Tennessee's credit, they got their running game going. I mean, all 3 guys touched the ball. All 3 guys ran really, really well. He just didn't seem to stick to it for some reason, and I think that ended up hurting him. So now we're in the Paul's draft. So we do this at the last season. We draft one more time for import. So here in the OMFL, we allow everybody to take 1 import with them, and so that's basically what this draft is anyone who wants to take another shot at a possible import or doesn't have their import can now draft in this last draft, and it'll be their import. So we're at pick number 17. and hopefully we'll get through the first round here tomorrow and do the second round, and then we're going to send the rest and then pick our imports. We've got a big plan for the import reveal, so we're going to do like a draft night, but with highlight videos, and do a whole reveal of each team's import that they're taking. And we're also going to do the same thing about the draft. And so after this draft is over, I'm going to come back and do like a draft show where we look at each team's pick and really break it down. Is this going to be an import? Is this just a really good player that's not going to make it in the OMFL into Madden 22? So that should be a whole lot of fun. And so let's get into it. It's good to see Bloop. Bloop, how you doing, bud?
Good. You guys got me here?
We got you, man. It has been way too long since I've talked to the Blooper. How is the golf game? Have you knocked off the rust?
Oh, yeah. After 7 months of winter, it finally started to come around, so it was good today. It was hot today, so it was a perfect golf day.
Wynn and I would probably debate just how quote-unquote hot it is in Canada right now. If you would like to experience hot, we will gladly invite you down here. It was 104 this weekend with like 4,000% humidity. So that, my friend, is what we would call hot. But with that said, I don't really know what cold is. It gets 62 in my house. I'm putting on a sweater. That's a summer weather for you.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Yeah, it gets to like minus 40 down here, so, or up here.
Oh no, I would move. That's the day I would just pack up all my stuff and I would just move. I would just drive until I'm warm, and then I would stop and live there. Bloop's one of my favorite humans here. Like a lot of people, a little burnout on Madden 21 and took a bit of a break. And so I'm glad that you made time for us, Bloop, because Bloop, you're a big NHL guy. And I know Wynn has always been a big NHL guy. And so both of you bring such a cool perspective. Sports Gamers Online, which is a pretty big deal, they do a live podcast that they actually call Press Pass Live. I don't know how I feel about that. Actually, I do know how I feel about that. But when you have 360 followers like I have, and he's got over thousands and thousands, then what am I going to say? But anyway, I was on their show talking about NHL, in the chat at least, and those guys had some pretty big feelings about the depthness of NHL. So we're going to dive deep. But before we do, Blue, did you get to see any of the championship game? What do you think about the Dallas Cowboys winning OMFL Bowl number 96?
Well, I did miss the game itself. I was working when it happened, but I'm not too surprised. Dwayne put together a great team. I'm actually just signing to the CFM right now, but he put together a great team. He went undefeated throughout the season. I don't think it was a big surprise. He was probably the best engaged team on the season. The EFC guys, we all kind of like had moments or whatever. Like every team was up and down, but I think the Cowboys were the team to beat this year, and no one could do it.
No one could do it. That's right. Well, congratulations, Dwayne. It couldn't happen for a nicer guy here. And congratulations to another championship, and we will get you your championship trophy in the mail to you very soon. I am perfectly. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm purposely taking down my OMFL footage. There's the words I'm looking for, and I'm going to put up Wynn's YouTube page because I know he has some videos on here. But before we start to dig in these, I did want to welcome Raj. The chat's dead tonight. I don't know if the chat's really dead or no, it's dead. There's people here tonight, but it's dead tonight. Maybe everybody's watching the Suns just finish their sweep of the Denver Nuggets. But I want to welcome Raj over to the OMFL board. We have some transition going on, and so Raj is going to step in to one of the open positions that we have. We have 2 more positions still open. One gentleman is thinking about it, and it's kind of open to anyone else who may be interested. So if you're interested, make sure you send me a message and let me know. And without further ado now, let's get into this. Let's dig into some NHL scouting. Wynn, tell me which one of these videos should I put up as some background?
Part 5.
Part 5. Here we go. Well, we're going to put up some background here. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that it's muted. We're going to go full screen. Wham, bam. Thank you, ma'am. Got a little background as we talk with Win and Blue. Now, guys, scouting is one of the biggest things that people complain about for Madden 21. And to be honest, it's not my favorite thing. It's a little mind-numbing. You don't even have to think about it. You press a handful of buttons and you move on with the rest of your evening. It used to be more in-depth, right? When you could pick which attribute you were going to look at, and you could pick different ones and spend different points, and certain points would give you a certain letter, and then more points would give you the number, and just all this fun stuff that you used to be able to do. And for some reason, they threw it away. And I don't know if it was because they were trying to make the game for the more casual owner who didn't want that in-depth feel. And so that's why they just made scouting so easy. And then as Win and I were doing last week, our first deep dive into NHL, I got really, really jealous because clearly NHL has figured this out. So, Bloop, I want to start with you. Give everybody a little bit of your background with the NHL. I know that you played in a lot of leagues and you have a lot of history. Tell everybody a little bit of the background, and then just where do you even start with NHL and the scouting department and things that we kind of wish would come over?
All right. Well, for my history of NHL, like I'm Canadian, so I've been playing it since like they started making the games. I think the first one I had was like NHL '94.
Oh yeah,
like,
classic.
Classic, yeah. Like there's only 4 teams or something like that. Yeah, but like, so I've been playing it since then. When they first became an online game in like the mid 2000s or whatever, they played. They had EASHL and which is 6v6 team hockey, and then also then they started doing HUT and stuff. So I kind of did a little bit of both. Then I played 6v6. Or no, sorry. Before I did the 6v6, they had 2 years of GMC, which was like the online CFM version of NHL. They did that for 2 years. I ran 2 leagues that were full the whole time. They're the 2 biggest leagues on Operation Sports at the time, and then after that, it kind of like the game faded away. When they moved to PS4, they didn't continue it. So.
Real quick, Blue.
And then
I don't want to interrupt you, but I got to ask this question because I talked with Win about it a little bit yesterday, or last week, I should say. Why do you think they don't have an online CFM mode? Is it they don't want to sink the money into servers? Is the pool of players not large enough? Is it laziness? Like, what is holding them back from having online leagues?
Well, I know the first version of like the 2 years that they did have it, like I mentioned, it was very bare bones. It was basically the old version of like GM mode, and it was just turned online, but then you couldn't draft. You just pretty much set up like a Madden draft board of how you wanted to rank your guys and just automatically drafted for you. But the reason I think that they discontinued it is because the most popular modes are HUT and 6v6. 6v6 is a huge community. That's where all the like esports stuff is now, and there's a big esports market for NHL. So I figured like that's kind of been their focus. They've been like in the recent 3 or 4 years or whatever, they've really been going back to that 6v6 stuff, and then also HUT is also a pretty popular thing, but.
Which is a blast, by the way. 6v6, when I played it, which has been a couple of years, was a ton of fun. So let's dive into it. Give us
just before we move on, my 6v6 team. At one point, we had one team, and we had something like 27 players on our team because everyone wanted to play so often. So we just kept having more and more guys. You got to find goalies or whatever, and like there would always be 6 guys on, so you can just play forever. Yeah, it's always been a blast.
Reminds me of FIFA, but on a smaller scale. Because we used to have a big FIFA team, and it was a blast.
Yep. Yeah, it's like FIFA, except for because it's a smaller surface or whatever. You're like everyone's always involved in the play, so it's a lot more fun. Actually, a lot of TFL guys last year played it, but this year we didn't really get a team going.
Well, let's dive into it. Let's just jump right into it. You get us going tonight. Where does your mind go when you start thinking about scouting in NHL and what we wish would come over to Madden?
Well, I think like you look at the video that you got up right now, you got your regional scouts. This is the main thing for me. You got regional scouts who have various levels of like competency, and through them, like all players get their stats from whatever league they play in. That'd be like if Madden did that, it'd be college, obviously. And like they differentiate between like the SEC, the Pac-12, the Big 12, all that shit, all those teams, or conferences or whatever. There'd be a differentiation between the stats, but your scouts would, depending on their levels, be able to identify players for you, and then you can send them to like look at guys closer as the season wears along. That's what happens in NHL. You get like basic letter grades from their regional scouting, their basic regional scouting, and then as you go along, you like identify your players. You get them this, you get them to. Sorry, I keep looking at Ross trolling me.
Yes.
I'm gonna actually like switch off the YouTube chat because I'm getting distracted. But yeah, so like as you go, like you get like basic letter grades to start, and then you like as you scout more, you get like more accurate letter grades, and then there's usually 6 letter grades. It's like offensive ability, defensive ability, you know, your like brains for the game, athleticism, all that kind of stuff like that. And then as you keep going, you identify more things like their high end potential, their low end potential, where they're gonna be like right away. Like, are they pro ready right now, or do they gonna take a couple of years to get to their max potential or something like that? And that's where I really feel like Madden could pick up on that, because you can identify like all these guys are getting stats kind of like you do in the real NFL world or whatever. Lots of guys could get stats, but like it's the close, deep, I guess, like in-depth scouting that teams do that differentiate the teams that win every year versus the teams that are drafting top 10 every year, right? So for me, that's like kind of the way Madden needs to go, is like give yourself more things to look at, more things to send your scouts to do, give yourself a reason to like have good scouts, or you know, in NHL at least they have amateur scouts and pro scouts, so you can have that too if you want to. If you're a team that likes free agency, maybe you scout more in the pro ranks. I don't know. That's kind of like the basic idea of it.
One of us build off of that. We touched on some scouting last week, but when we started talking about area scouts, even there's one thing that Bloop just mentioned at the end there that I didn't realize until I looked at the screen, and he said it, the idea of pro scouts and having rookie scouts. That's a whole nother level of depthness.
Well, I can go in a little bit of detail with that. The NHL series over the last couple of years, if you remember last week, we talked about Fog of War, and basically as far as drafted kids, that Fog of War is always in play with drafted kids. You can actually turn on Fog of War for professional players as well. So therefore, and you can mask the attributes of all the players in the NHL, and essentially the only way to know their true abilities and where they'd fit on your team, or what you could do with that player if you traded for them or signed them in free agency, is to send your professional scouts out there to look at those players. So like, especially around like, say, in the NHL at the trade deadline, you're gearing up for a cup run. You need to get some players. If you don't know any players on any of the teams in the pro ranks, you don't know who you could pick up. Maybe somebody, if you go by like a big name, maybe that big name has had a bad year and fallen off. Maybe their overall's not as good as you think it should be. And then you pick that player up, you trade a bushel load for them, thinking they're the grade A player you know they are. And it turns out they've fallen on hard times, and they've become, instead of being like an 89 overall, they're actually like an 84 overall. And now it's like, oh crap, I just traded, a bushel load of stuff for this player that may not help me get to the playoffs or get through that cup run. Now, the fog of war for professional players is optional. You don't have to have it on. You can turn it off. You can turn off different aspects of it. So if you want to know, just say the players overall and have that be definite all the time, you know what their overall is, but have their attributes under fog of war where you have to scout them to find that out, you can do that. All that's available, and all that ties back into pro scouting, where essentially you have to take your pro scouts and just like with the amateur scouts not being able to scout every prospect, your professional scouts won't be able to scout every player. So you're going to have to kind of cherry pick and choose, what players you want to scout. So you're going to have to be particular about who you kind of seek out, because unless you just have the top end scouts, which is just about impossible, especially if you play in owner mode where they limit your scouting budget, you're going to be lacking in some information, just like you would in real life.
Bloop, I want you to talk about fog of war and give your thoughts. But before we do, how does the professional scouts work? Does it give you a list of potential free agents or trade targets, or is it just like the entire roster that's in the league and you just pick what random players you want to scout?
I believe, let me jump in on that, Bloop, just a second. I think in the video, I believe it's another minute or two in, I actually start showing off professional scouts, I think. I'm going off of memory. And with the professional scouts, you can actually scout an entire division, or you can scout individual teams. And if you scout an entire division, obviously it's going to take longer, but you can cherry pick and choose what bank of players you want to scout. So say if you're at the trade deadline, you're wanting, say, a forward, an offensive based player. You'll go into your professional scouts. You'll basically take a look-see, and essentially you can set up and say, hey, I only want to scout forwards. And then once you say that, you'll say, okay, what type of forwards do I want to scout? Do I want to scout snipers? Do I want to scout two-way forwards? Sorry, I got some stuff falling around me. Do I want to scout grinders, enforcers? What do I want to scout in particular? And then you can even set it by, I believe, like what line they play on. So you can kind of scout that way as well. So if you're looking for a first-line sniper that you would get you over the hump offensively, you can actually target that and look at the entire division, and your scout will only go looking for those particular players.
That's sick. Blue, talk to me about Fog of War. Wayne kind of gave his thoughts. It seems like a cool thing. I don't know if it is in Madden, if it's like one of those behind-the-scenes things, but what are your overall thoughts about Fog of War?
Yeah, at least on the NHL version. The other thing that Wynn didn't mention about it is when you go to free agency in the summer, if you don't have guys scouted, like they'll have like if you don't have a good player scouted, his demands will be way higher, right? And you'll be thinking, oh, this guy must be a good player, and you could sign him, and like he says, you think he might be an 89 overall player, but he could be actually an 82 overall player, and you just suddenly paid $4 million more than you should have per season.
That would revolutionize free agency in it would be that alone would be a game changer.
Yeah, and then the other part about it is it depends, because as you see it on that video, you hire scouts to either be amateur scouts or pro scouts. So as you're building your team, depending on how you like to build, you hire more scouts. Like when I'm on NHL, I'm a drafter. I don't do so much free agency stuff. So I have I think out of I think there's 8 scouts. Or maybe 10 scouts. I think maybe 2 of them are pro scouts, and everyone else is an amateur scout for me. So when I go to free agency, I have no idea who almost anybody is overall wise. I know their names because I know NHL, but I don't know their overalls or whatever, so I don't usually dive into free agency on there. It's a big difference on what you're able to do. I also I think all-star superstar players are pretty well scouted. The best player in the league, say Connor McDavid, his stats are out there. So you don't gotta start you don't gotta it makes sense where you don't gotta scout the best players in the league, but so that the guys that he plays with are the guys that are the lower line. So in Madden terms, it'd be okay, Jalen Ramsey's the best corner in the league kind of thing, or one of the best corners in the league, but okay, but the guys that are playing opposite of him
Mm-hmm.
on that number one defense, how are they? That's the kind of stuff that the fog of war really makes. Like, I think the fog of war is really useful in that sense.
Now, I will just to kind of tie into that. The only knock I would say against Fog of War from a commissioner perspective, because I can bring that look into the mix, is with trades. Like if you have to do trade committee style stuff, not knowing the overalls, not knowing the exact overalls, could pose to be a problem long term for those leagues that like to kind of do those trade committees. But as a whole, I think it makes it a lot more interesting just because you have to be on top of your game to know what you're trading for. And if you get a bad sale of goods, if you trade for a player that isn't as good as you think, that's on you. But that hurts you in the long term from an engagement standpoint of, you know, players coming into your league. If they come into a team that had an owner that had a bunch of bad trades, because of the fact that they didn't do their scouting, now you're setting somebody behind the eight ball, not really fair to that owner. So there's some give and take to the Fog of War. Yes, it makes some nice things, but there are some things, especially on the pro side, that it can hurt a league, online league anyway, long term because of those, you know, disparities of not seeing the overall and then making a trade and then realizing, oh crap, I traded for a player that's actually bad, you know?
Yeah, next week I'd love to have you both back on, or as often as y'all can. But I'd love to just start talking about attributes next time. So like this idea of like some are like this potential rating, and some are letters, and some are number, like all of that stuff. I think that would be a really awesome conversation. And Ross, man, I gotta call you out. You giving my boy Bloop all this hard time. My audio was desynced, and I remembered it from watching the championship game. No one has said anything the last two streams, and I just heard it just hit me, and I just went and fixed it. So my bad on the audio being desynced. I do everything from one computer, and when this computer gets under a load, it lags my video. So then I have to lag my audio so that they match. But then when it's not under a load, like right now, and it's fine, then my video is where it's supposed to be, and my audio is still set to be lagging. So anyway, it's fixed. Sorry, Ross, you should have said something. But when dig into the next step, if when it comes to scouting, and pick which one that really sticks out to you, but when it comes to scouting, we know we have scouts, and we can pick area scouts, and we kind of dive deep into that. But where's it go even deeper, especially in the rookie side of things, when it comes to figuring out if a player's good or not good, if they're going to fit your team, is there schemes? Like, dig a little bit at the rookies.
Okay. I think if let me just pull up. I'm going to pull up the video on my side real quick so I can maybe give you a timestamp to look at. Give me just a second here. I'm going to delay as much as possible. But I did pull up on some of my stuff. Excuse me. I pulled up at one point I show actually the number one player in the draft I'm doing for, I believe this is my Seattle Kraken non-live stream franchise. But I believe at one point I pulled up yeah, that's as close to the official colors of the Kraken as I could get. So, and actually, is it? Okay, there we go. Let's see. How far is this? If you wanted to jump to the timestamp of 24 minutes, that would put you really close to showing off the top player in this draft. And I can kind of talk about it as I go through the player. I don't know if you're able to jump it. That's the guy. So he's perfectly scouted on my side. You see, first off, number one, there is a generic central scouting is what it's called. That's that CS ranking in the left-hand side, top left. That's a generic scout ranking. That's basically everybody has that general list. My scout rank, though, is actually what my scout team says this player is. And you can see it's got 3 bars, so basically it's about 75% accurate. They're saying pretty much it's probably pretty likely he's the number one pick in the draft. And then down here at the bottom, you can actually see all his stats. And every player, if they are playing, has stats. And you can see it says USA East player stats and strength of competition. It's a C-. So essentially, that's a little bit below average competition. So against below average competition, these are his point totals: 6 goals, 39 assists. plays 25 minutes a game. It's a defenseman, so that's a little bit higher than normal. He probably plays some penalty kill and some power play. But the big things come down, let's see, that's about the 24-26 mark. That's where you start seeing strengths and weaknesses. Basically, the 6 groupings at the bottom, which is shooting, puck skills, senses, skating, physical, and defense, all of those are groupings of individual attributes. So like your shooting, for example, is your wrist shot power, your wrist shot accuracy, your slap shot power, and your slap shot accuracy all lumped into one letter grade. And that letter grade usually corresponds with, when you get the player, stars. This is probably, I think A is 4 stars, I believe, maybe 3.5, or yeah, I think it's 4 or 4.5 stars. So essentially, this guy's a really good shot coming out. Puck skills would be like, I believe it's deking, hand-eye, passing, and I can't remember the 4th one. It escapes me.
Puck control.
Puck control. Thank you. Puck control. Puck skills. Puck control. Duh. I'm from the South. I'm not quite 100% on my hockey terms, but I'm pretty decent for being from here. Then your senses. Your senses I really like because
you didn't even say that.
Yes, I did. Yes, it was a long, long time ago, and they were in Lake Charles for like,
we were kids, yes.
3 minutes. 3 minutes, but I mean, yes, they were there. The Lake Charles Ice Pirates, RIP. Senses is actually a fun one because that includes your offensive awareness and your poise, which is an interesting stat that's not really in Madden, but poise actually affects like your playoff performance. So you actually, the higher poise you have, the better you perform, not only in playoff games, but like in critical situations. Skating is your basic thoughts whenever your athletic ability. So we're talking speed, agility, acceleration. That's tied into your skating attributes. There's also balance and endurance. So endurance being how long you can stay out on the ice, stamina basically. Physicality is essentially how hard you can or how hard you can check. I'm trying to equate it to football. So how hard you can check, and also your overall strength in general, your fighting skill. I know I'm forgetting some other stuff. There's 5 attributes in there. And then defense is essentially your defensive awareness. So your offensive and defensive awareness are separated by those. And on defense, you've got stick checking, shot blocking, defensive awareness, and face-offs. So basically your ability to take a face-off, generally speaking, a defenseman won't have to worry about that, but the other 3 are definitely important for a defense guy. But that's the breakdown. So essentially, when you look at the letter grades, you can kind of have a general idea of how many stars the player will have when you get them, and that'll give you an idea of the number, attribute-wise, what the numbers will be. So, I mean, you can kind of get an idea by Leach's breakdown that he probably deserves to be the number 1 pick. Based on just the letter grades. But that's what the letter grades break down to do, is they break down into those different attributes. And so basically those 6 general categories break down to about, I believe, 30 attributes. I believe it's about 30 attributes. Let's see, 4, 5. I'm trying to do math in my head really, really quick. And it's in the mid-20s.
Yeah.
So, but that kind of gives you an idea of the depth there. And like I said, you've got the strengths and weaknesses, so you can kind of have a general snapshot of the player, and that would be great to see in Madden, just to see those things like like the things that you hear about on draft day with prospects, especially like you hear about corners in their hips, how well they turn their hips. And the other thing, which Adrian Leach's profile shows at the 25, I think it's 25-30 mark, they show his player comparison, Victor Hedman. They show that he's NHL ready, which means he is of an overall to play in the NHL from day 1. And they show his scheme fit. Every player, to a certain degree, has those scheme fits listed. Now, for defensemen, it's a lot smaller of a suite. But I believe later on down the line, okay, you sent an image. Later on down the line, I start looking at some players to kind of compare players I haven't scouted as well. And you can kind of get an idea. I believe, I'm trying to remember the guy's name. It's not Tanner Wickware, but like just the amount of prospects you have. Logan Stankoven, that's the guy's name. It's about the 30-minute. It's at about the 30-minute mark, but it's a guy who I haven't scouted as well. It's a guy who I haven't scouted as well, but you can look at his stats, just his stats alone. You can say, okay, look, he's got 18 goals and 23 assists in 56 games played. C- competition. Is it the best competition in the world? No, but at the very least, I can look and say the guy can play. I mean, obviously he can play. He might not be a top line, ever be a top line starter, but he might play on like a third line or a fourth line and be a great contributor there. So you can just look at that alone would make, scouting great for Madden, just to be able to look and see made up stats about players and go, oh, okay, this player plays in the SEC. He started 10 games and he's a receiver, and he made, he averaged like 8 catches a game for 120 yards on average and scored a touchdown a game. Yeah, the guy played in the SEC and had those kind of numbers. Yeah, I'm probably going to draft him because he's probably pretty good. So just those things alone would increase engagement.
This is where I'm at in my life, boys. I had a hard time listening to that whole last portion because I'm wondering who wants to be Mrs. Stank Oven. I don't know that that's a name that's going to attract any woman that wants to be Mrs. Stank Oven. Blue, talk to me about a little bit of the nuts and bolts of how the scouting works. I've heard something about money, like an account, like you have so much money to spend. Like, how does this physically work? Right now in Madden, you get the entire draft, you go click button 3 times, it gives you the top 3 ratings, and then you get the combine scores, and then you got everything that you basically need to know about that player. How does it work in NHL?
Yeah, so I think the main thing is like on NHL's franchise mode, it gives you a budget, and like you can adjust your budget if you want to, like, because you can like you gotta manually like do your budget. So like you could have a bunch of new scouting, you could have a bunch of new coaches if you want to have good coaches that develop guys better than like. So if you're not such a good drafter, you can have good coaches, they develop your players better. There's also a travel budget for those guys. You got your budget for like marketing and stuff. Anyways, you go from there. So you get your scouting budget, usually like it'd be like $5 to $10 million a year, something like that. You hire your scouts through that, and then what you got left over is like your travel budget. So, and it doesn't really cost a lot to go travel because these guys are area scouts anyways, regional scouts kind of thing. So it's not like you're like sending them way out of their way; they're already there. But like you gotta like divide it all up properly. And then they have like, you've seen that central scouting rank. That's actually a real thing, central scouting in hockey. Someone will do that, so it's like here's your general idea. Anyways, you go from that, you get your regional scouting done, and then you send your scouts into the more individual based scouting. So like if we wanted to check out if Stankoven is worthy of being a husband to someone at any point in his life, we could send a scout directly to go look at him. I think you can go anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks. 6 weeks you'll get a complete report if he's completely unscouted. If he's partially scouted, like your scout's already seen him a little bit, you can send him for like, I think you can send him for like 3 or 4 weeks, and you'll probably get everything done. And that's a lot of games in hockey terms, right? 3 to 4 weeks. So like in Madden, it would probably be like maybe 1 or 2 games to go check that out. And then so basically, like it's just like a system where you get your basic looks of the draft in general, and then you start nitpicking. Okay, I want to scout this guy. I want to scout that guy. That's kind of how you manage it. That's kind of how you identify players closely. I think Wynn was saying about seeing that receiver in the SEC. Like you'd send us if he's like rated to go in like the 3rd round, you'd be sending a scout there right away. Like, who's this guy? Like, we gotta see more about this guy. So that's kind of how you identify. That's how different teams could identify star players for later in the draft, right? Like everyone could see someone a little different, or maybe a guy that fits their scheme a little better. They go find a star player in like I don't even know what the conference is called, the one with the mountains.
Mountain West.
Mountain West, yeah. You can find a guy in the Mountain West maybe if you know what you're looking for. And it's just it'd probably take a long time, and if you're not a good drafter, you hire better coaches or whatever. But you could, I think, like just through scouting, you could add 20 hours per real life week of stuff to do for Madden, like going through stats and stuff and seeing who you like.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff looks so super in-depth. We're right at the hour mark, so let's go ahead and land this plane so this old man can go to bed. Thank you both for working through some technical issues. The technical issues were that I turned on the HDC or whatever it's called so that I could watch Peacock, and I forgot that you can't run a capture card with that on. So that was why my capture card wouldn't come on. I had to turn that off. But let's land this plane with some closing thoughts. I'm going to start with you, Wim. If you could pick 2 things that you think realistically could be something that could jump from NHL into Madden, what would they be for scouting?
Oh, realistically, you had to throw that. They had to throw that in there, huh?
Okay, just wish list.
Okay, thank you. Please take the handcuffs off a little bit. Realistically, I would love to see the ability to assign scouts to regions like you can in NHL. So being able to put scouts in different areas of the country or different areas of the world, that would be awesome. And then the other thing is probably having that central scouting list, having some kind of neutral third party draft board that says, hey, these guys are ranked 1 to whatever, and then you could use that as your guide or use your scouts to get a better gauge of the player. So just the general third party scouting and the ability to just assign regional scouts and be able to look at guys that you want, I think that would be pretty awesome.
Blue, give me 2 things that you'd like to see jump over.
I think the main one for me is I would really love to have the potential system in Madden.
Yes.
And not just the potential, but like what you come out at versus potential, right? Like, because you could have a guy that's a good player right now, a good linebacker, but he's not gonna get much better or whatever. I would love to see that dynamic be part of it because right now guys are unlimited potential, right? Like if you draft a guy at 76 overall, all you know is you got to play him to a certain amount of games or whatever, and get him to star dev or superstar dev, and he's going to be 90 plus overall. So I like to see potential. And then the other thing, just if we're talking just scouting, I would just love to see this, like the college stats, and be able to like reference that later in the draft. Like if you are looking for a running back and not sure what to do, but it's a 5th round and here's a running back with 1,300 yards this season, maybe I'll try him or something like that. I don't know.
That would be nice.
Yeah, those are my 2 main things.
So I'm hearing central scouting system, something kind of gives you an overall general idea, but could be right or wrong. Area scouts, the ability to send scouts to specific areas. A potential system, so not just where every player is unlimited all the time, which I totally agree with. And then this, oh crap, I lost the last one. What was the last one, Blue?
What did I say?
Oh, how did I lose it?
Just college stats.
College stats, that's it. Yeah. College stats alone would add 10 hours a season to engagement online. And that's like, that's when I think about look, I think we always look back at history with this like twinkle in our eye that it was better then. I don't think it was better then. Our first champion won by literally throwing fly route lob balls for touchdowns all game. Like the game was super flawed. But what I think I miss most about that game, that type of game, was that you could log on, like you had your own server. So my computer was always the server. So when I got home, I'd always check the server to see who was up. And there would always be 3 to 5 guys scouting or looking at their team or looking at stats and in the chat, because back then every server had a built-in chat. And so like I just think about adding college stats. Could you imagine like up late one night at midnight and there's like 4 dudes on all looking at stats and like, hey, did you see this guy? Hey, look at this guy. Oh, I got 1 sleeper in the Mountain West or whatever. Like it would be so much fun just to add that as another piece, and it would add in a lot more engagement. And I love the idea of sleepers and potential and just the free agency thing, which we'll do a whole show just about free agency. Would just be so much fun. So, guys, this has been.
Can I add one last nugget?
Yeah, please.
Just one real quick before we round it up. Also, with the scouting system in place in NHL, you can actually scout for new prospects.
Yep.
So it's not always just the people on the board that you see.
Explain that.
So basically, if you wanted to go to the Canadian minor leagues, and you didn't like any of the prospects there, you could actually tell your scout, find me somebody. And they would go looking for prospects based on your specifications. So they would actually hunt out at new players that would be on your draft board that may not be on anybody else's.
What are we doing, man?
Takes a long time.
Like, what are we doing? What'd you say, Blue?
I was just gonna say, like, something like that would take a long time, so it's not like you could just do it all the time.
No.
But it could benefit you if you did it like once a season, maybe. Right? Like, you can find your guy. You can find a magic unicorn.
I'm all for finding magic unicorns. So much depthness in this game, and I really do. With some of the rumors that we're hearing about EA and 2K buying up smaller games that have this type of depth in it, ESPN trying to get back into the sports gaming world, like, I think we're on the cusp potentially of seeing more games that have this stuff. When I talk about looking back on games with a twinkle in our eye, my God, we could talk for 6 hours just about head coach. Like, right now.
Yes.
Win caught a semi when I said head coach immediately.
Yes.
Like, that game has so much depth and like, you didn't even play the game. It was just about the GM stuff. And we know that there are like baseball games out there that are just GMing, and there is definitely a genre that could be added to our sports games to just add another level of engagement. And that's what I always want, especially when I think about, the guys who, like me, I've got one championship in 21 years here. I'm never going to compete with the D-Moneys, the D-Waynes on a consistent basis. But
one more than I have.
Well, I've also played 5 times longer than you have, so there's that. But like, this would keep me engaged. You know what I'm saying? Give me something to look forward to, and that's what makes the NFL so special. Is that every team thinks on what's the date today? On June the 13th. That their team can win the Super Bowl this year, right? Like, every team has that new feel to it, and this would add that in. I think somebody's about to blow up, so maybe we should get off of this before they blow up real quick. Thank you guys so much. Win, Bloop, you guys are both awesome. Thanks for doing this. We'll be back next week, so come hang out with us. Hopefully Win and Bloop both, but if not, at least one of them. We're going to talk attributes, and we know how Madden does attributes, but we're going to dig into the letter system, the number system, free agency, rookies, your team, when you're scouting other team. We're going to really dig at just attributes and potential, like how NHL really does it. So come back, join us next week. Congratulations again to Raj, for joining the board, and congratulations to our buddy D-Wayne for winning the OMFL Bowl number 96. This is a lot of fun, and it feels like the pressure of Madden is off. The PS5 version of the league is up, and so if you want a super laid back, I'm talking super laid back. I don't care. We just playing to have fun. Come join us on the PS5 side of things. If not, let's finish up this draft. We're going to have a great import show with our boy Ross, and I think Maniac's helping us out with it. And then we're going to do a draft recap show and talk about how it could potentially affect other teams. And then we got to get Win an official team here. So I know we've got a couple of open teams that are posted right now. And then if Mo finds a PlayStation 5 before we start, then I got to boot somebody. So Maniacs may be out of luck, or Ross, or I don't know. Maybe we just flip a coin. No, I'm just kidding. It'll be a lot of fun. A lot of fun things coming. Thank you guys so much for joining me and talking about this. Let's come back next week and really hammer down on it. Have a great rest of your week, guys. God bless you. A shameless plug for myself. I'm building a second YouTube channel for my personal stuff and for my church community stuff. Home Church 217 on YouTube. come give me a subscribe. The numbers are terrible. I just started it like not long ago, and it's getting a lot of my attention now. I think you'll be blessed by the content. But if not, just come give me a subscribe just because I don't know. It's a pity subscribe. I'll take a pity subscribe at any time. So, guys, have a great rest of your week. God bless you. We'll see you next time. Peace.
I called you tonight. I've been thinking. Send a message, you don't reply. I'll keep looking for you, even if it's strong. Sitting all alone in my room. You're stuck so hard in my head. I don't care.